The perfume hit him before the lights did. It was not Soo-yeon's perfume. His wife wore something quiet, white tea and cedar, barely there, the kind of scent that only announced itself when she was already leaving a room. This was different, heavier, the kind of fragrance a woman wears when she wants to be remembered long after she's gone. Jae-Won Lim stepped through the front door of his Hanamdong penthouse at 6:17 in the morning wearing yesterday's shirt. He had a story ready, an emergency overnight stay at the Signal to finalize the Busan development deal. His phone had died. The charger he kept in his office desk was the only one that worked with his model. He had rehearsed it in the backseat of the taxi from Gangnam, smoothing the story into a shape that felt inevitable, the way all his best lies eventually did. He expected the apartment to be sleeping. He expected the pale glow of the kitchen nightlight Soo-yeon always left on, the one shaped like a lotus flower that her mother had given them as a wedding gift. He expected, at the very least, the faint smell of barley tea cooling on the counter, Soo-yeon's habit when she couldn't sleep, and didn't want him to know she'd been waiting. But the apartment was not sleeping. It was hollow. A specific, airless hollow, not the quiet of rest, but the quiet of a place that has been carefully, deliberately emptied. The lotus nightlight was gone. The shelf near the entrance where Soo-yeon kept her small collection of Celadon pottery, pieces she had been collecting since university, each one found at a different market or inherited from a different relative, was bare. The wall above the entryway console, where a framed photograph of their wedding at Bukshan Hanok village had hung for 11 years, showed nothing but a clean rectangular shadow where the frame had blocked the sun. On the console table, scented with a precision that felt almost architectural, sat a single white envelope. No decorative seal, no embellishment, just his name written across the front in Soo-yeon's handwriting, neat, vertical, unhurried. Jae-Won Lim, the 44-year-old chairman of Lim Group Holdings, one of the most aggressive real estate development conglomerates in South Korea, stood in his own darkened foyer and stared at his name on an envelope. He did not know it yet, but his life had ended 3 hours ago. Welcome or welcome back. If this is your first time here, this channel tells the stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Drop a comment below. We want to know where you're watching from. And please subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Now, let's talk about who Jae-Won Lim really was. 12 hours earlier, the penthouse suite at the Grand Intercontinental Seoul Parnas had been everything Jae-Won told himself he deserved. He was a man who had built an empire from a single commercial plot in Mapo that his father had left him in 2003, undeveloped, undersized, and considered worthless by every real estate agent who looked at it. Jae-Won had seen differently. He had borrowed against the land, leveraged the loan into a small mixed-use development, flipped the development into a portfolio, and spent the next 2 decades turning that portfolio into the largest privately held real estate group in the Han River corridor. He had an office on the 42nd floor of a building he owned. He had been profiled in Forbes Korea 3 times. He believed, in the marrow of his bones, that he had built everything himself. Yoona Choi was 28. She had come to Lim Group Holdings as a strategy consultant from a firm in Seoul's Uido Financial District, brought in to advise on the Busan Coastal Development Project. She was brilliant and impatient, and she possessed a kind of electric restlessness that made Jae-Won feel like the most interesting man in any room she occupied. She laughed at his industry jokes. She pushed back on his decisions. She was everything a man like Jae-Won convinced himself he needed when the real problem was simply that he had stopped looking at what he already had. "You always get this look before you leave," Yoona said, watching him adjust his cufflinks in the mirror. The cufflinks were silver, engraved with the Lim Group crest, a gift from Soo-yeon on his 40th birthday 4 years ago. He didn't look at them as he fastened them. "Like you're putting on armor." "I have an early meeting," he said. "You always have an early meeting." She pulled a robe around herself and studied him from the bed. "When are you going to stop pretending the meeting is the reason you go back?" "Yoona, I'm not being difficult. I'm asking a real question. It's been 8 months. At what point does this become something more than a Tuesday night at the Intercontinental?" Jae-Won picked up his blazer and gave her a smile that had closed deals across 3 cities. "Let me get through the Busan signing. After that, we can talk about what comes next." He believed in nothing he was saying. He had no intention of leaving Soo-yeon. Divorce in his world was not just personal, it was structural. It would unsettle investors, alarm his board, and invite the kind of press coverage that complicated acquisitions. Soo-yeon was the face of Lim Group's family image, the elegant, composed chairman's wife who attended ribbon cuttings and charity galas and made every stakeholder feel that the man at the top of the company was stable, grounded, trustworthy. She was an asset. He managed her accordingly. He kissed Yoonor on the temple and walked out without looking back. In the elevator, he checked his phone. Nothing from Soo-yeon. She usually sent a short message when he was traveling, a line of encouragement before a meeting, a note about what she was planning for dinner. The screen was blank. He told himself she was asleep. He crossed the Han River Bridge at 5:50 a.m., the city still dark below him, the river silver and indifferent. He rehearsed his story. The negotiations had run until midnight. He'd checked into a room rather than risk the drive home. He hadn't wanted to wake her. She would nod and make him tea, and he would sit at the kitchen island and perform the grateful husband, and by 9 a.m. he would be back at his desk as if none of it had happened. He had done it many times. He turned into Hanamdong and took the private underground entrance to the building. The lift rose silently to the top floor. The doors opened. And the apartment was dark and hollow and smelled of nothing. He found the envelope. He stood in the foyer and opened it. Keep watching, because what Soo-yeon had been doing while Jae-won was rehearsing his lies in hotel elevators, that is the story. Subscribe now if you haven't already, and share this video with someone who needs to see it. We'll be right back in this room with Jae-won and the envelope that ends his world. The first document was a petition for dissolution of marriage, filed with the Seoul family court the previous afternoon. Petitioner, I am Soo-yeon. Respondent, Lim Jae-won. Received and stamped at 2:43 p.m. Jae-won read it once, then he turned the page. Behind the petition was a stack of photographs. Professional prints, not phone screenshots. Time-stamped and location tagged. Jae-won at dinner with Yoonor at Mingles in Cheongdam 3 months ago. Jae-won and Yoonor walking through the Dongdaemun Design Plaza at night, his hand at her back. A photograph taken through the glass lobby of the Grand Intercontinental, the two of them entering the elevator together, her hand brushing his arm. The angle was clean and steady. Long lens. A professional photographer, not a lucky bystander. He had been watched. Beneath the photographs was a letter on the stationery of Park Hyun-soo and Partners, Legal Counsel, Seoul, Seoul. Jae-won knew the name the way all men of property in Seoul knew it, with a cold recognition, the way you recognize the name of a hospital known only for difficult cases. Park Hyun-soo did not take straightforward divorces. He took divorces that were meant to be total. Dear Chairman Lim, we represent Mrs. I.M. Soo-yeon in the matter of her petition for dissolution of marriage. We write to draw your attention to Article 12, Subsection 4 of the Matrimonial Property Agreement executed on April 3, 2013, at the offices of your own legal counsel, Kim and Song Associates. This clause, inserted at the express request of the bride's family and signed by both parties, states that in the event of proven marital infidelity by the higher-earning spouse, the full transfer of jointly registered marital assets shall be made to the injured party. Furthermore, and we wish you to read this paragraph carefully, Chairman Lim, Mrs. I.M. Soo-yeon is the registered beneficial owner of Chunggo Asset Management, the private investment vehicle that provided the foundational capital injection into Lim Group Holdings in March 2004. Jae-won sat down. He did not decide to sit. His legs simply stopped cooperating. 2004. The year he had been trying to convert that first Mapo plot into something real, burning through his father's small savings, maxing every credit line a 24-year-old with one undeveloped property could access. And then, a call from a legal intermediary, an anonymous investor. Private capital, no board seat demanded, no voting rights requested, just a clean injection of 400 million won that had arrived in his corporate account like rain after a long drought. He had asked the intermediary once who the investor was. The intermediary had said only, a family office that believes in the project. He had not asked again. He had taken the money and built the empire. Chinggo Asset Management. He had never heard the name. But he knew what Chinggo meant. Blue Lake. It was the nickname Soo-yeon's father, a retired professor of classical literature from Yonsei University, had called her since she was a child. A private family name, the name of something still and deep. He called his CFO, Han Dong-jin, who answered immediately despite the early hour, which told Jae-Won everything he needed to know before a word was spoken. Dong-jin, Chinggo Asset Management, tell me. A long silence. Jae-Won SSI. His CFO had never used that form of address before. I received a call from Park Hyun-soo's office at 4 a.m. this morning. They convened a shareholder meeting at 5. She doesn't have the shares to convene. She has 44% of the founding equity. In the original structure, before your shares fully vested in year 3, she held controlling interest. Han Dong-jin's voice was very quiet. The initial capital, the 2004 injection, it was hers. Her mother had a significant inheritance from her grandfather's land in Gyeonggi-do. The family converted it into investment capital. Soo-yeon's father structured it through the intermediary because she didn't want you to feel indebted to her family. She wanted you to believe in yourself. He paused. Those were her exact words, apparently. She told me 2 years into your marriage. I've been keeping that confidence ever since. Jae-Won could not speak. The meeting was brief, Han Dong-jin continued. The independent directors voted with the shareholder bloc. I'm sorry, Jae-Won SSI. The resolution passed. You've been removed as chairman and CEO of LIM Group Holdings, effective 5:30 this morning. The line stayed open. Neither of them said anything. Don't come in today, Han Dong-jin said finally. Security has instructions. Jae-Won set the phone down on the bare console table. He walked through the apartment slowly, the way a man walks through a place he is trying to memorize. The living room was intact, the furniture, the art on the walls, the pale wood floors, but all the small human evidence of Soo-yeon was gone. The book she had been reading, a novel about the Joseon dynasty that she'd been annotating with small sticky notes for 3 weeks, was gone from the side table. The persimmon-colored ceramic bowl on the kitchen counter where she kept dried yuzu peel was gone. The pair of rubber gloves hanging from the kitchen sink tap, small, cheerful, patterned with little blue flowers, were gone. She had taken everything that was her, left everything that was his. She had drawn a very precise line. He went to the bedroom. Her wardrobe was open, bare, not ransacked, meticulous. The hangers were evenly spaced, as if she had taken the clothes one by one and folded them the way she folded everything, with unhurried, quiet attention. On her nightstand was her wedding ring. Beside it, a single sheet of paper, folded once. He picked it up. There were 2 lines. You treated silence like stupidity, Jae-Won. I was never silent because I had nothing to say. Soo-yeon. He read it twice. Then he sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. He tried to access his personal accounts through his banking app. Biometric rejected. PIN locked after previous failed attempts he had not made, which meant someone with account access had entered wrong credentials until the system locked. The joint accounts showed a status flag he had never seen before. Pending matrimonial asset order, contact branch legal. He went to the building's private parking floor and got into his car, a black Genesis G90, registered under LIM Group Fleet Management. He pressed the ignition. The console display activated. Then a system message appeared in clean white text. Remote suspension active, authorized by Fleet Management Office. Contact administration. He sat in the suspended car in the empty underground parking bay of the building he lived in but no longer owned, and tried to think. He called Yuna. She answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was flat in a way he hadn't heard before, not angry, not hurt. Flat the way a person's voice goes flat when they have already made a decision and are merely waiting for the conversation to confirm it. I saw the news alert, she said. LIM Group issued a press statement 30 minutes ago. What did it say? That the board has accepted the resignation of Chairman Lim Jae-Won, effective immediately, in order to pursue private matters. She paused. They called it a voluntary resignation. It wasn't voluntary. I know. Another pause. Jae-Won SSI. I've been asked to appear before the company's ethics panel next week, regarding my consultancy engagement and whether the scope of our relationship constitutes a conflict of interest. He already understood what was coming. I can't be your emergency contact right now, Yuna said. I have my own position to protect. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Jae-Won sat in the silence of the underground garage for a long time. He thought about the matrimonial agreement he had handed to Soo-yeon 11 years ago. His lawyers had drafted it to protect his assets. He had presented it to her 2 weeks before their wedding with the assumption that she would sign it because she was a woman in love, and because he was the one with the future worth protecting. Her father, the quiet Yonsei professor with his classical literature, and his pipe, and his absolute refusal to be impressed by Jae-Won's ambitions, had read every clause. Had crossed 2 lines, had added 1. Article 12, subsection 4. Jae-Won had not read the subsection closely. It had been inserted without drama and signed without argument, and he had taken Soo-yeon's calm compliance as something unremarkable, as he had taken everything about her. He thought about the first time he had brought her to see the Mappo plot before it was anything, just an overgrown piece of land behind a convenience store, hemmed in by apartment towers. He had talked for 20 minutes about what he was going to build there, the vision, the timeline, the return on investment. She had listened. She had looked at the land carefully, the way she looked at everything, as if it deserved to be seen. Then she had said, the soil drainage looks good. Whatever you build here, plant something on the roof. It will last longer than you expect. He had laughed. He had thought it was a charming, unworldly thing to say. He had not understood that she was telling him who she was. And somewhere in Seoul this morning, in a hotel suite booked under her family name, or in the quiet apartment in Mappo she had maintained in her own name since before they married, a detail he had known and never thought about, I am Soo-yeon, was free. For the first time in 11 years, she was moving through the world without managing him, without making herself small enough to fit inside his idea of what a wife should be, without waiting. The lotus nightlight she had taken with her, the celadon pottery wrapped carefully in cloth, the annotated novel about the Joseon dynasty, the rubber gloves with the blue flowers. She had taken everything that was hers, and left him with everything that wasn't enough. The city outside was fully awake now, Seoul in the morning, urgent and unsentimental. The river would be silver in the early light. The cherry trees along Uedo would be exactly as they always were. Jae-Won Lim sat in the silent car and began, for the first time in his adult life, to understand the difference between a man who builds something and a man who inherits it without knowing. He had inherited the foundation and spent 20 years calling it his ambition. And now the woman who had laid that foundation, quietly, without credit, without complaint, had simply stopped holding it up. Jae-Won Lim, chairman of nothing, sat in the underground dark and felt the full weight of what he had been standing on. And that is where we leave him. Before we go, we want to hear from you. What do you think Soo-yeon's next chapter looks like? Do you think Jae-Won deserved everything he lost, or is there a version of this story where something could have been saved? Tell us in the comments. And if this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Every single subscriber is how we keep bringing you stories like this one. We'll see you in the next